We celebrate the haunted, the historic, and the horrifying, courtesy of the souls who live it year-round. Behind every fright is a fearless artist. This is Working the Fright Shift.
Clock into Working the Fright Shift, the gateway between imagination and fear, with your host, Ted Doherty.
Hey folks, I'm Ted Doherty. Welcome to another episode of Working the Fright Shift. We've got a great fear architect today with the wonderful Hauntina. But before we dive into that, we're kicking things off with this week's Horror Blueprint.
The Horror Blueprint, the art behind the fear.
Today, we explore one of horror's most enduring archetypes, the final girl. From terrified victims to strategic survivors, the final girl represents resilience, intelligence, and the ever-changing role of women in horror cinema. Horror thrives on fear, suspense, and survival. But at the heart of many of its most iconic films lies the final girl, a character who doesn't just endure terror, but actively transforms because of it. She's more than just the last survivor. She's a reflection of resilience, intelligence, and shifting societal expectations. The final girl is horror's answer to the hero's journey, navigating chaos and emerging stronger, sometimes scarred, but never broken. From classic slashers to modern thrillers, she's become a fundamental part of the genre, embodying the tension between vulnerability and strength. As horror evolves, so does she, no longer just a frightened victim, but an active force in her own survival. Whether she's outsmarting masked killers or taking the fight directly to the threat, the final girl represents something deeper. The power to fight back when the odds seem impossible. She's smart, tough, and constantly evolving, reflecting not only the changing role of women in horror, but also the shifting cultural anxieties we all experience. So, where did this idea of a final girl come from? Well, the term final girl was actually coined by Carol J. Clover in the book Men, Women, and Chainsaws back in 1992, and it completely changed the way people looked at horror movies. She pointed out how slashers put their heroines through the ringer physically, emotionally, and psychologically before they finally win, or at least survive. But here's a specific point. These characters aren't just lucky. They transform. They start off scared, maybe even unsure of themselves, but by the end, they are fighters. Originally, final girls had to fit a certain mold. They were good, responsible, maybe a bit reserved. Definitely not like the party girl. Just think about it. The characters who drank, ignored the creepy noises, or made the bad decisions, well, they probably didn't survive. That was Hollywood reinforcing old school ideas about morality. But modern horror has tossed that rulebook out the window. Today, final girls can be flawed, rebellious, and messy because survival isn't about being virtuous. It's about being strong and adaptable. So let's talk about some of the most legendary final girls. I'm just scratching the surface and how they changed the game. First up, we have Sally Hardesty from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974. Sally wasn't a strategist. She didn't have a plan. She just ran, fast and terrified. Honestly, that raw desperation is what makes her survival so horrifyingly real. She doesn't outsmart Leatherface, she just manages to escape. That final shot of her laughing hysterically, drenched in blood, that moment solidifies the psychological damage inflicted upon her. She has survived physically, but mentally, she is shattered. The horror doesn't end when the credits roll, implying lasting trauma beyond the film's conclusion. And, well, that's trauma at its most chilling. Next up, we have Laurie Strode from Halloween 1978. Laurie is probably the most recognizable final girl. She's smart, cautious, and protective, setting a new standard for horror heroines. When Michael Myers invades Haddonfield, she doesn't panic, she fights back. Her character is designed to contrast the recklessness of her peers, reinforcing the notion that responsibility leads to survival. And as the franchise continued, Laurie stopped running and started preparing. By Halloween in 2018, she is full-blown survivalist mode, proving that horror heroines don't just endure, they evolve, creating a shift in horror's portrayal of female agency. Next up, Nancy Thompson from A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. Nancy was one of the first final girls to truly take control of her own survival. She didn't rely on luck. She studied Freddy, figured out his weaknesses, and set traps. Her whole arc is about refusing to let fear control her. Instead of running, she deliberately faces Freddy, recognizing that fear is his power source. By rejecting her terror, she disarms him entirely. Next up, Sidney Prescott from Scream, 1996. Sidney was different because she was self-aware. Scream poked fun at horror cliches, and Sidney wasn't just a character, she understood the rules, then broke them. She wasn't pure, naive, or passive. She fought back on her terms. This depth enhances her survival story. Then there was Erin Harson from You're Next, 2011. Erin is a total badass. Unlike most final girls who barely scrape by, Erin dominates the killers. Thanks to her survivalist upbringing, she flips the whole home invasion horror formula. She doesn't run, she hunts. Her ability to quickly adapt and defend herself makes her one of horror's most physically capable heroines. How about Sienna Shaw from Terrifier 2, 2022? She was a grieving teen who transforms into a battle-ready heroine through a costume inspired by her late father's visions. When she is miraculously resurrected by a supernatural sword after a fatal encounter with villain Art the Clown, it becomes clear that her survival is tied to something greater than chance. With purpose and power, she returns to decapitate and defeat Art, securing her place as a final girl shaped by fate, not fear. These are just a few examples. There's tons and tons more. The idea is that the final girl turns fear into strength, becoming not just survivors, but fighters. Despite their strength, some critics argue that final girls are still rooted in suffering, forced to endure extreme violence before earning their survival. This raises questions about whether horror truly celebrates women or exploits their pain for entertainment. The genre's relationship with female protagonists remains an ongoing debate, which we're not going to get into here, but the bottom line is this. Final girls aren't just survivors. They are horror's defining force, shaping the way audiences experience fear, empowerment, and resilience on screen. Their evolution mirrors changing cultural narratives, showing that strength isn't just about brute force, but about adaptability, courage, and self-determination. The debate around horror and gender representation continues, but one thing is certain. The final girl isn't just a character type. She is the backbone of the genre, ensuring horror remains compelling, relevant, and deeply rooted within the horror blueprint. We've closed the dusty ledger of the horror blueprint, scribbled with fear formulas from decades past. Let's meet one of the new generation of haunt makers. Meet Hauntina, with her signature look that blends Victorian gloom with vibrant horror. Hauntina has become a Halloween icon. Whether she's exploring legendary haunts or creating creepy, chic fashion, she brings style and scary savvy to everything she does. From eerie photo shoots to autumn adventures, she's a must follow for anyone who lives for October. This week's Fear Architect resurrects the craft with fresh blood.
Fear Architects, crafting worlds of terror.
Welcome to Working the Fright Shift, Hauntina. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for doing this today. First off, how are you doing and where are you calling from today?
I'm in my house right now and I'm doing really great. Thank you so much. It's like starting to pick up into the Halloween season. So it's like when everything's starting to come alive. I love it.
I love it too. And to help celebrate all of that, I do have some questions for you.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, what is your earliest haunted house memory?
Ooh, okay. So I live in the Inland Empire and we used to have a theme park right by my house called Scandia. And every year they would advertise a huge haunted house. And I remember the first time I went, I was in middle school with my friends, and my mom was like, I don't know if I want you to go. And I was like, please. And it was like the most fun I had. It was only one big house, and you'd go through and you'd see like Michael Myers, you'd see Freddy, you'd see like werewolves and vampires. And it was like a mishmash of all sort of different horror and Halloween characters, but it was so much fun. Like it was one of those really great, like home built sort of vibes, like very authentic Halloween. And that was honestly like a tradition of mine with my friends. We would go up and through high school. And sometimes I would just drive by because literally it was like 15 minutes away. So like when I was able to drive, I'd be like, I'm gonna go to the haunted house by myself. So like that was like a really great memory for me. Unfortunately, the theme park's not there anymore, but it was a really great kickstart to like me really loving the thrill of going to haunts.
Oh, I love all of that. I remember that haunt.
Yeah.
So that is very, very cool. Now, growing up in terms of Halloween, did you do a lot of trick or treating as a youngster? And was there a defining Halloween costume that you had as a youngster that said, this is it, this is how I feel like I should be celebrating Halloween and the season?
Definitely. I really appreciate my parents, especially my mom, for really diving into all of the holidays, but especially Halloween. With me and my sister growing up, we were a year apart. So a lot of our costumes were tandem. Like one year, I remember we were both witches and she got us the coolest wands. And I just remember keeping that wand for years. It was one of the best costumes. It felt so fun, just like running around like, it was so cool. Yeah, like I had a really great upbringing with Halloween and trick-or-treating. That's something I really want to get back into giving back because I know the Halloween spirit with trick-or-treating kind of died down a bit, especially in my neighborhood. Like I'd stay home and I'd get only like 3 or 7 trick-or-treaters some years. But now that this year's on a Friday, so I'm really hoping that it kind of brings a lot more kids back because I think that's something that's so quintessentially Halloween is like going out and trick-or-treating and dressing up as kids. So yeah, definitely when I was a witch, that was probably my favorite costume that really made me feel like, yes, this is me.
Will you stay home to celebrate Halloween so you can give out candy to the trick-or-treaters?
I'll stay home until like 8 or 9 p.m. Then I'll probably go out. So this is on Friday. We haven't had like a Friday Halloween weekend like in a minute. So I definitely will probably make plans to go out at night, but I do try and stay home at least to see the costumes and stuff. It's always so fun. Where my neighborhood is, there's not that many kids, so not too many people come by. I think a lot of people do like the trunk or treating, which I have like a little bit of a bone to pick with trunk or treating. I understand it's safer, but I feel like it kind of ruined the spirit of Halloween. But I hope that kids come out more for sure to go to houses.
I hope so too. Now, people who follow you, who are familiar with you, know your style. And you have this really killer style that is kind of a mix between gothic and glittery glam. How did this all develop?
I feel like I've always liked to express myself through fashion, like through the different eras, I call them, of like my life. Like I grew up in middle school. I was very into like the sort of like punk rock, and then I got into punk and psychobilly, and then it was like scene emo, and then indie rock, and the accumulation of like all the different genres of music I listened to throughout like my youth. I sort of like just took different aesthetics from each one and kind of made it my own. I feel like I really found my style more so in my mid 20s when I really started to embrace loving Halloween and horror out loud. I think that was probably like when I really found my true like sense of style. I'm definitely attracted to the more gothic style because I do sort of vibe more with like the music, and that's why I sort of like go more towards that genre aesthetically. But I feel like I really just like to embrace the dark, the macabre, and just dress in a little style that maybe people might think is a little weird. But I feel like it's a lot more accepted now. I think the alternative style has just boomed in the last like 5 years, especially. So it's like not really like weird anymore. I think it's like people think it's cool. So it's fun. There's a lot of more variety as far as like shops and places to go to. You don't have to really DIY too much anymore. There's a lot more availability. But I think it's, I just really love embracing the darkness and the beauty of gothic fashion.
I love it. And you mentioned gothic, the word gothic. What does that mean to you emotionally, aesthetically, maybe even spiritually? What does gothic mean to you?
So I would say emotionally, it really gave me a way to embrace sort of like the darker, macabre, mysterious, all things spooky. Probably growing up, people probably thought you were more like a weirdo. And I think now it's like embraced more and celebrated, especially like within the friendships and stuff that I've found. Aesthetically, I just love sort of like the drama of it, the black lace, the velvet, the cemetery vibes, being bold and romantic in a way in that gothic style. For again, with the music, it definitely is what drew me to that style more so. It speaks to something a little deeper, a little more haunting. And I think it reflects a lot in the fashion. I don't necessarily do like trad goth makeup, but like I do a lot bolder makeup usually. Spiritually, I think it's really just about finding beauty in darkness. And I really love that about gothic culture. It's about not being afraid to be a little weird. And I really appreciate that about the culture for sure.
I do too. And thank goodness things have really opened up, like you said, over the past handful of years. It seems like things are a lot more accepted, and I don't have to worry about wearing a Halloween shirt in March or anything like that.
Yeah.
If you had to spend eternity watching only three horror films,
Mm.
you're on your desert island, which ones would you choose and why?
Ooh, this is hard. If I had to stick to horror films, I think Scream is kind of a no-brainer. It was really the blueprint for like the slasher genre. I feel like it was smart without being pretentious, but it was goofy. It gave us like so many iconic characters. And I think it's just such a rewatchable film. So Scream would definitely be on there. Next, I would say Suspiria, just because visually it's pure fantasy. It felt like a nightmare ballet, essentially. I just thought it was so beautiful. It was terror wrapped together with like just surreal horror. I think it was one of the first horror films I watched where I just was like, wow, this is gorgeous. Like it just felt so like, yeah, I was feasting with my eyes. It was such a beautiful film. And I just love the story of like the witches and everything. So Suspiria would definitely be on there. Next, ugh, this is really hard because three is really hard. But one of the films that I really love, Evil Dead 2013 remake, I think that is probably the best horror remake to exist. And the practical effects of it, I think, was really great. the amount of blood that we got. It was just like so gross, but so amazing to see. And I think honestly, like it was a lot more intense than the original version, and that's like it was a lot more horrifying. And I really appreciate that about that. And that's one of my favorite horror movies. So those are probably my three: Scream, Suspiria, Evil Dead 2013.
Ooh, they are all very, very good. And well, that Evil Dead remake was turned into a haunted house at Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah.
Which leads me to ask you this. You have attended since those early days of going to the Scandia theme park. You have been to dozens and dozens of haunts throughout the years. In your opinion, what makes a haunted house, a maze, attraction truly unforgettable for you?
For me, it's about feeling completely immersed in the storyline. And it's not just something you're walking through and just getting jump scares. It's something immersive and beautiful, and you just really feel like you're in the story. I think it's something that, not to say anything about any, I love all the theme parks, but I think it's something that Knott's Berry Farm or Knott's Scary Farm does really well. They really get you immersed in the story, especially with the newer houses. I remember when I first went into the Grimoire, I was just like, wow, like this is a movie. Like you're immersed into it. I thought that was like just gorgeous. So I really think it's obviously having fun, um, getting those scares in, obviously, but it's really about the fantasy building and really feeling like you're in another world. I think that's where you really get like, wow, like when you first take that step out into reality, you're like, wow, my God, that was so cool. Like just having that feeling, I think that's what makes haunts just so much fun. And you want to keep going back for more for sure.
Amen. I agree with all of that. It is really trying to immerse folks into these different worlds.
Mhm.
Now, going back to horror movies, Nosferatu remake.
Oh
It,
man.
it, it struck a nerve, I think, with you and a lot of folks. Can you describe what it did differently and how and why you think it affected you?
Oh man, Nosferatu became my personality like the last 3 months of 2024. I think it really struck a nerve because it didn't try to just copy the original. It reimagined horror in a way that felt so deeply atmospheric and emotional and raw. It leaned, especially when, with Orlok and the vampire, it leaned into the loneliness of the monster, the isolation, the hunger, like not just for blood, but for connection. And I think that's something I really appreciate about Orlok and the vampire in that universe, especially with Ellen, also it really showed the deep connection between them two. And visually, I mean, that film just like blew everything out of the water for me. It was visually stunning and gothic in every sense of the word. It was shadowy, the color palette, the eerie stillness, and just a lot of those shots, the one where you have the carriage and it's going into Orlok's castle, and even just like there with the horses, and it's just so gorgeous. It slowly builds tension. It was tragic. It was beautiful. And it's just one of those films that just really captivated me last year for sure.
Me too. I know it didn't resonate with everybody,
Yeah.
but for me, I loved it. I thought it was grand. I did not know a whole ton going into it. So
Mhm.
I was like totally blown away. So, yes, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to all the things of social media that you're doing between TikTok and all of that stuff, how do you balance the authentic side of you, and how do you balance that with performance as well as messaging and expressing your brand publicly?
Mhm. With social media, it kind of just happened. I would start posting horror and Halloween and things like that like 10 years ago, and there maybe wasn't that huge of a market like there is now. So I think people really appreciated like, hey, you can celebrate Halloween year round and in different ways. You can make any holiday spooky. And I think it really comes down to a balance because, obviously social media is not my job. I work in education and I just graduated nursing school. So I'm trying to pivot into that field. And so for me, it keeps it balanced because to me, it doesn't feel like a job. It's a hobby. I can step away from it and that I really appreciate. Keeps it more authentic that way where I don't have to keep performing and trying to go viral and oh, I have to get paid, like and I understand for some people that is their job and that's totally awesome. But for me, I just don't think I could be authentic to myself if I was relying so much on that. So I just put something out and if it does well, awesome. If not, then hey, whatever. Like I kind of it's a balance between really forgiving yourself a lot because I think there's a lot of pressure when it comes to social media as far as like how your things perform or things like that. And I think once you really step away and stop relying so much on the algorithm and just put things out because you like to, I think that really helps for sure. Yeah. And like it's a really fun way, social media has connected me with so many great friends. A lot of my really close friends we met because of social media, whether it was on TikTok or Instagram or even back on Twitter. It's been a great way to sort of meet people like you. And so I think that's awesome because people can really hone in on their niche and sort of find creators that they love. And I really appreciate the fact that people like the way that I celebrate Halloween and spookiness and follow me for that reason. And sometimes I feel like, oh man, I'm not putting out enough content, but it's something that I try and balance within myself. But, it's just celebrating, I think, the things that really you authentically love. And I think people resonate with authenticity. And I think it shows within like my sort of like following in different accounts. I think I really appreciate that people are like pretty chill. Like so and they all just love Halloween and spooky shit.
I love it. It's true. And that leads me to my last question for you. And you've kind of skirted around it a little bit, but more directly, how does the spirit of Halloween live in you all year round?
Oh man, I think it's just about having fun with Halloween and the holidays, whether it's putting a little jack-o'-lantern slice of cheese on a cheeseburger for summer weed. Like I think there's little things that we can do to celebrate the spooky spirit year round. A lot of it tends to be tied with like consumerism and obviously, but I think a lot of it you can just do little things every day to just be spooky and celebrate Halloween and connect with your friends and just like have a good fun spooky picnic, for example, go to a cool haunt, check out a horror movie in the theater. I think just having those tiny little celebrations within your day just to really embrace the spooky, the macabre, the Halloween, the everyday sort of like haunting feelings. And I just think it's so much fun. I love being able to be a little darker in aesthetics and stuff like that, but also just having fun with it, I think is really cool.
I agree with you 100%. We live it. We love it.
Mhm.
Where can people find you? How can they follow you?
I am on Instagram as the Hauntina and on TikTok is just Hauntina. Unfortunately, on Instagram, someone named Tina Han took the Hauntina on its own. But one day I'll get it. But yes, the Hauntina Instagram and Hauntina on TikTok.
Thank you so, so, so very much for working the fright shift.
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Big thanks to our guest, Hauntina, fear architect, a master of stylish dread. Now, let's shift focus from the future of fear to its dusty roots. This is Echoes of the Past, your archive of the macabre and a space where I examine the eerie influences that quietly restructured my professional DNA.
Echoes of the past. The origins of scare experiences.
Today we're carving back the layers of wax, literally, to explore how wax museums went from historical exhibits to full-blown horror spectacles. We're going to talk about their origins, their connection to horror films, and how they helped shape the haunted attractions we love today. Wax figures have been around for ages, like ancient Egypt and Greece ages, where they were used for religious rituals and funeral purposes. But the wax museums we know today owe a lot to one woman, Marie Tussaud, a French sculptor who learned the craft from her mentor, Philippe Curtius. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know. Please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. And let's just say Marie's early work wasn't exactly sunshine and rainbows. She made death masks of executed nobles during the French Revolution. Yes, very gruesome. Fast forward to 1835, and Madame Tussaud opened her first permanent wax exhibition in London. It had all the usual suspects, royalty, celebrities, historical figures, but one section stood out: the Chamber of Horrors. This is where she displayed wax figures of criminals and victims from the French Revolution, and people were obsessed. In fact, the British satire magazine named Punch coined the term Chamber of Horrors in 1846, and it stuck. Madame Tussauds wasn't the only game in town. Wax museums popped up all over the place, each with their own spin. The Royal London Wax Museum in Canada focused on historical figures. The Hollywood Wax Museum in Los Angeles was all about celebrities. And then there was the Movieland Wax Museum in Buena Park, California, a dream for film lovers. And there were others. House of Frankenstein Wax Museum, Lake George, New York, is a full-on horror experience. There's the John Brown Wax Museum in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, dedicated to the abolitionist John Brown. And the National Presidential Wax Museum over in Keystone, South Dakota. Not really horror, but still fascinating. Now, as horror movies gained popularity, wax museums adapted. The Chamber of Horrors started featuring Dracula, Frankenstein, Freddy Krueger, and other horror icons. This shift turned wax museums into interactive horror experiences, paving the way for attractions like Movieland Wax Museum's The Black Box. Movieland Wax Museum, once the largest wax museum in the United States, opened in 1962 and introduced the Black Box in 1982, a year-round horror attraction that let visitors step into terrifying movie scenes. The scenes included Halloween from 1978, Michael Myers, the sheet over his head wearing the glasses, recreating the bedroom finale scene. Then there was Alien from 1979, a close encounter with a xenomorph. And then there was a full segment dedicated to the movie Altered States from 1980, a surreal, mind-bending movie, and they even had like the sensory deprivation tank and all that. But to top it off, the whole attraction was narrated by the legendary Vincent Price, the king of horror himself. Now, unlike your typical haunted house, the Black Box at Movieland Wax Museum was designed by theme park professionals, which meant the sets were incredibly detailed, far beyond what most haunted attractions were doing at the time. Instead of simple black walls and jump scares, the Black Box featured fully realized environments complete with intricate props, lighting effects, and immersive storytelling. Visitors didn't just walk through a maze, they stepped into movie-quality sets. They were designed to make them feel like they were inside iconic horror films. The impact of the Black Box became a major inspiration for my friend Chris Williams, the art director of Universal Studios' Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood. Thanks to this influence, Halloween Horror Nights became famous for its highly detailed sets. Chris and creative director John Murdy and their team bring the same theme park level immersion to HHN, where each maze has movie-quality environments. I've worked with both of them very closely, and their approach, I believe, sets HHN apart from other Halloween events and solidified its reputation as one of the most immersive horror theme parks in the world. Over in Orlando, there was Universal's Horror in Wax from 2004. This haunted house was set in a twisted wax museum where the owners used real dead bodies to create their exhibits. The attraction featured classic Universal monsters like the Wolfman, Frankenstein monster, and Emotep, all frozen in wax at the moment of their demise. But The museum wasn't abandoned. It was home to a deranged group of misfits who lured guests inside for their own sinister purpose. Sounds fun, right? Then at Not Scary Farm, they had Waxworks that debuted in 2019. This was designed by my dear friend Daniel Miller, and the story revolved around Dr. Augustus Scratch, a former plastic surgeon turned mad scientist who lived in this abandoned wax museum. But instead of regular wax figures, he used hot molten wax and bloody flesh to create his masterpieces. It ran several years until 2024, but it was a classic, demented, twisted Daniel Miller maze. So, why do wax museums matter in the world of horror attractions? Well, they laid the foundation for immersive horror experiences. The Chamber of Horrors introduced audiences to gruesome realism, and attractions like the Black Box pushed the boundaries of horror entertainment. Today's haunted houses, scream parks, and horror mazes owe their terrifying atmosphere to the legacy of wax museums. Modern scare attractions use lifelike figures, immersive storytelling, and cinematic horror elements. That was all pioneered by wax museums. Whether it's Universal Studios Hollywood with their movie-quality sets, Orlando's Horror and Wax, Not Scary Farm's Waxworks, and countless others, the influence is undeniable, and these wax museums and attractions inspired by them have greatly impacted me in my own work. So next time you step into a haunted house, remember, you have wax museums to thank for that heart-pounding terror that screams within the echoes of the past. And just like that, our shift comes to a close. Huge thanks to our fear architect, Hauntina. Within these stories is the blueprint of fear itself, how we face it, how it transforms us, how we create it, and sometimes how it sets us free. If you liked what you heard, do us a favor and tell a friend to tell a friend. Give us a good review, 5 stars, and help spread the word. Thanks for spending your nightmares with us. I'm your host, Ted Doherty. Beast wishes, and until we meet again, it's officially time to clock out of Working the Fright Shift. Working the Fright Shift is written and produced by Ted Doherty. No portion of this recording may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written and express permission of the producer. All opinions expressed in this recording are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily reflect the views of the producer or affiliates. For more details, visit www.workingthefrightshift.com. Copyright 2025, Ted Doherty. All rights reserved.